We're talking about everyone's favorite topic today, everybody, and that is earnest money. Probably the most dull thing that you'll learn about today, but also potentially a necessary thing that you will learn about today. So we're going to talk about what it is, how much you should do for it, and kind of how does it work? Like, is it refundable? Does someone get to keep it? Like, all that kind of stuff. Now, we got a dog on set today, as we do pretty much every day. You've got these fat dog lips. Okay, so anyway, let's talk about earnest money. Let's get down to business, everyone. Let's get serious here. So what is it? I often describe it to our clients as good faith money, okay? It is money that you put down to show the sellers that you're serious, right? You're basically putting some skin in the game, if you will. Although it's not that simple, because if it's refundable, then is it really skin in the game? It's more symbolic, right? And I'll get into what I mean by that. So it is kind of a real estate, buying a home, rite of passage, if you will. It's a bit symbolic. It is like, hey, we are putting down some money to show you that we are taking this process seriously and that we are in. How much would you do? It depends. It depends on a couple different dynamics. So as a general rule of thumb, you would do about 1%. So let's just take a $300,000 house. 1% of that would be what? 3 G's? So you put down $3,000. Sorry, everyone. You put down about $3,000 in earnest money. Now, when is it due? When does it become due? So in Utah, it's due within 4 days, calendar days, not business days. So like Saturday, Sunday count. It's due within 4 calendar days from the time that your house goes under contract. So let's just say we write an offer, and on Monday they accept the offer, right? We put it in on Saturday, and on Monday they're like, you got the house. So Tuesday would be day one, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? So it'd be due by Friday at 5 p.m. Who does it go to? Typically, it goes to the real estate broker. I'm speaking specific to Utah, but it's going to vary state to state. But in Utah, typically it goes to the real estate broker, but there's also brokers that do not hold earnest money. Like, it's just something that's the particular policy of that brokerage. So sometimes it winds up going to the title company. So typically, I would say in virtually every case in every state, it's either going to wind up at the real estate brokerage or at the title company. It would just go into a brokerage or an escrow account, and it just sits there, okay? So going back to how much you do, 1% would be like normal. So on a $500,000 house, you put $5,000 down. In a very competitive real estate market like this, in a real competitive market like this, he's judging me right now as well. I would recommend doing more if you can do more. You may be in the position of, hey, I don't have more than $3,000 to allot to this. So it's like, okay, cool. Well, that is what it is. That's what we had to work with, and so we just send it on the $3,000. If you have more, I would put down more. In terms of what it ultimately gets used for, a couple things. If you're putting down a down payment, let's just say for easy math's sake, you're putting $20,000 down payment. The $5,000 earnest money that you put down will go towards your down payment. So it's not like, well, where does this earnest money go? It just sits there forever? Like, what does it get used for? Whatever your cash to close is, which is a combination of your down payment and your closing costs, okay? So let's just say it's you're doing $20,000 for your down payment and you've got $5,000 in closing costs. So that's $25,000 cash to close. You would take that $5,000 and that's just going to count towards your $25,000 cash to close. Okay. So instead of having to come into the closing table with a $25,000 check, you would come in with a $20,000 check, even though it's probably in the form of a wire transfer, but that's a story for a different day. So it gets deducted from whatever your total bill is going to be at the end of the escrow process. In terms of, is it refundable or what happens with that? That is very much a case of it depends. And a lot of that's going to depend on your state. So I would recommend ask someone that works in your particular state. Depending on where you are, we may have a good point of contact for you. I don't know because I don't know where you live. You can tell us where you live, and I can tell you if we got a point of contact for you. But in Utah, we'll just keep using Utah as the example, it is completely refundable until the due diligence deadline. How long is that? If we take a 30-day escrow period, right, 30 days from the time we get the house under contract to the time you're closing on the house, getting your keys, moving in, usually about 30 days. Typically about the first 10 days to maybe even 2 weeks of that is the due diligence deadline. So as long as you cancel the contract within that time period, your earnest money is refundable unless you stated something other words when you wrote the contract, like the earnest money is completely non-refundable because you're just trying to like really go hard in the paint to get that house. But typically it is refundable through the due diligence deadline. After the due diligence deadline, you move into the period of time between the due diligence deadline and the financing and appraisal deadline. That one in Utah is, it's not that it's up for debate, but it's up for like, you write in the contract how much would be refundable during that time period, right? So you write down in our contract, you go, hey, essentially it's written in bro science terms. If we cancel after the due diligence deadline, but before the financing and appraisal deadline, 2,500 of the 5,000 will go to the sellers and 2,500 will go back to the buyers. You can make that number whatever you want. You can make it zero, right? The sellers don't get anything if we cancel after that time period. It's a little bit of a risk just because it's, you know, how long can you tie up someone's house before you have some sort of liability and skin in the game in that process? In my opinion, split it at that point. But after the financing and appraisal deadline, which is typically about 3 weeks into the 30 days, so you know, about 21 days-ish into the 30 days. At that point, it's completely non-refundable and it would go to the sellers. That is assumed. That is the way the contract is written, unless you write some sort of addendum that stipulates otherwise. So that is how that works. I always recommend, look, during that due diligence, that after that period, kick the sellers a bone, man. Like if you cancel 18 days into the contract, it's like, man, you just tied up their house for 18 days where they couldn't sell it. And while I represent you as the buyer, hypothetically, it's like I don't defend bad behavior. I'm on the side of what is correct. Like it's golden rule kind of shit. Well, what would you want someone to do to you? Well, you would want to get compensated for having your house off the market for the last 18 days. So that's how I look at it. It's all debatable, but that's the basic framework of how it works, right? So think good faith money, showing you got some skin in the game, typically goes to the brokerage, might go to the title company, and gets used towards your cash to close. And then varying degrees of refundability, definitely not a word, varying degrees of refundability at different phases of the contract. That's how that works. Guys, just to top off the bourbon conversation for the day, this is just another strong recommendation for me. I've got a bottle that I've been sipping on and cracking, but this is to keep it in the Utah family here. The bottle from High West. This is a midwinter's night dram. Damn it, I just tore the label ever so slightly in the back. Oh, that's a bummer. This is phenomenal stuff, guys. Finished in a port cask. Just absolutely wonderful. This is another one of their like an annual limited edition thing that they do that's very, very desirable, very hard to get. They go for $100 a bottle, which is a nice bottle, but on the aftermarket, these things will wind up being like $300-400 a bottle sometimes. Highly recommend. If you can get one, I don't know that I wouldn't spend $400 for it, but if you can get one, I'd say inside of $200, get it. It really is. It was a pleasant surprise. I'm not even a big High West whiskey guy, but that midwinter, man, one of them, probably top 5 for me. I mean, it really is phenomenal stuff. So anyway, that's the recommendation for the alcoholics out there. Beyond that, if you guys need real estate help, let us know. Happy to help. We work primarily in Utah, but most of the times we have more things going on in states other than our own, between Tennessee and Florida and Texas and Vegas, and go down the list, right? So if you need help, let us know. Happy to help. Beyond that, hope you guys have a good weekend. We'll talk to you later.